These were the words of Giorgio Chiellini in 2018 when Juventus beat Tottenham in the Champions League round of 16. Some would say that this was a tragic moment for the football club, but this has always been a recurring theme. For a team, for a football club that's always had so much success and yet is seen as a failure in the eyes of many. Ladies, and mostly gentlemen, I present to you Tottenham Hotspur. As a football fan, I don't know where to begin with this football club. But I think as fans, I think we all know that the person that best describes the football club is the chairman of the club himself, Daniel Levy, a man responsible for the success and the failures of the football club. But before we answer the question, is Daniel Levy really the problem at Spurs? We gotta go all the way back and look at the state of the football club before Levy took over. The year was 1993. Alan Sugar, a businessman who made his millions through his business ventures, acquired the football club with Terry Venables. At first, many saw this purchase as a lifeline for the football club, who were at the time going through financial turmoil, bankruptcy, you could even say. It wasn't necessarily the best time to be a Spurs fan. Alan was seen as a controversial figure by the Spurs fans. Many of the fans felt that he used the club as a business venture rather than a football institution. The fans felt that he never represented the values or the philosophies of the football club, and this was evident in many of the decisions that he made over the years, his most controversial being sacking Terry Venables the night before the 1993 FA Cup final, a final that Arsenal would go on to win. Not the best time to be a Spurs fan. Now, I'm sure what you're thinking. These two came together, bought the football club, saving it from legit bankruptcy. Then years later, Alan decides to sack Terry. How did this come to be? Well, it's quite simple. Let me spell it out for you. Alan was responsible for the business side of things and prioritized profit above all else. He was a businessman, so it's quite understandable. Terry, who was loved by the Spurs fans, was responsible for the football managing side of things and wanted nothing more than glory. He wanted the trophies, the admiration of the fans. He wanted the bragging rights over their North London rivals, Arsenal. Because these two had contrasting ideas on how to run the football club, they oftentimes never saw eye to eye. Things got so bad between the two that Terry ended up buying players behind Alan's back, a decision he would soon regret as he'd be fired. But let's put ourselves in Alan Sugar's position. You just got into business with your co-partner and they go behind your back to sign players that you had no clue about. Now, if that was me, bro, personally, I'd be fuming. But hey, that's just me. You gotta put yourself in this guy's position, and he had to make the tough call. So I can't really blame him from that type of perspective, because anyone would have done the same thing. I could go on, but the one decision that put the nail in the coffin for me was appointing an Arsenal legend as the Spurs head coach. After that decision, it was done, bro. I'm sorry. Think about the fans, bro. They were not having it. Look, we have to give props where it's due. George Graham did win the League Cup in 1999, but as a Spurs fan, do what you will with that. Now look, he wasn't the greatest of owners, but genuinely wanted to do good by the football club, and if it wasn't for his investment in 1991, the club would have been relegated, and for that, we need to be thankful. After years of having to deal with the media and the abuse from the Spurs fans, Alan Sugar sold his shares to English National Investment Company, INIC, a company that was managed by the main man himself, Daniel Levy. There's no doubt that Daniel Levy has revolutionized the football club for generations to come. From redeveloping the infrastructure of the football club, building a stadium worth billions, arguably being the best in the Premier League, having the best training ground facilities in the whole country, employing managers that had great relationships with the fans and played an attractive brand of football. People don't understand that he took Spurs from a mid-table team to a consistent top 4 outfit. In the last 9 years, Spurs finished in the top 4 on 5 different occasions. This sounds impossible to believe considering Spurs failed to secure a top 6 spot throughout Alan Sugar's entire 10-year reign. Not enough credit goes to how Levy has managed to transform the football club, going from the likes of Soldado, players I forgot even played for the club, to the likes of Christian Eriksen, Harry Kane, and Son Heung-min. It's not surprising that Spurs are ranked the 4th highest revenue generating football club in the Premier League, only being topped by Manchester United, Manchester City, and Liverpool themselves. The money is there and the statistics back it up. I'd argue that Spurs are one of the best financially run football clubs in the world. Now, I know you're gonna argue with me on that last one, but bro, look it up. It's there. Spurs have all the tools to be one of the best clubs in the world. The question is, why aren't they? Let me explain, bro. The biggest problem with Daniel Levy has never been on the investment that he's made in the football club, but rather the biggest problem with Daniel Levy has always been on the type and the timing of the investment. See, there are 2 types of players in football. The first are considered to be the very best in their position, the game changers, the marquee signings. When we think of these players, we think of Vinicius Jr., we think of Kevin De Bruyne, we think of Erling Haaland. These are the players that make the difference between winning and losing championships. The second type of these players are those that have the potential to be great, but still need the time to develop before they are considered the finished article. Think of Kobe Mainoo, Oscar Bob, and Archie Gray. There are risks involved with these developing players, as nothing is guaranteed in football. Spurs mostly associate themselves with developing players. Spurs have never been the type of club to go out and demand for the very best players in world football. They rely on buying players cheap or developing them through their footballing academy. This approach has served them well as they've managed to produce players like Kyle Walker and Gareth Bale. This approach has worked countless times and has brought them great success, but this is the same approach that's holding them back. Over the years, they've refused to spend big money on big players in the transfer window, and this leads to them always being one step behind their rivals. Name the last time Spurs bought a player that made you think, damn, they could actually be a threat. Yeah, exactly, me neither. It's never happened. In 2019, Tottenham became the first club not to register a first team signing in the transfer window since 2003. I'm sorry, bro, but not making a signing throughout an entire transfer window is and should be considered criminal. One moment that will always stick with me was when Spurs lost the Champions League final to Liverpool in 2019. When a club loses the Champions League final, you'd think that they'd reinvest in the football club, that they'd get bigger, get better, but no, that's not Tottenham. You'd think that they'd get top players who are gonna come in and make an impact, propelling the club forward, but they chose to do nothing. They let the bigger teams come in, and one by one they took all their best players. If you look at Liverpool, after losing their Champions League final to Real Madrid in 2018, what did they do? They bought players that came in and made an impact straight away. Fabinho, Alisson, Keita. These were players that were wanted by some of the biggest clubs in football. Liverpool went out, got the players they needed, and you already know what happened next. They won the Champions League the very next season. It felt like with Spurs, after losing their UCL final, they regressed. They went backwards. By no far am I saying that Spurs are a bad team. Quite the opposite. They're a good team with good players, but that's all they'll ever be. Until Daniel Levy starts investing in the type of players that can compete with their top 6 rivals, they'll just be a decent team with good players. They'll never be seen as anything more than that. Now, bro, thank you for watching. I appreciate you, bro. If you did like the video, click subscribe. See you in the next one, bro.